Welcome to the Power of Partnering with the Horses for Healing, a free virtual conference that knows that there are many different roads but one destination, and it's healing through connection. There are so many different paths out there and models for partnering with horses and humans, and we hope that you will join us throughout this conference as we explore the power of equine-assisted activities and therapies with industry leaders, therapists, dreamers, and horse professionals, all on how they have found partnering with horses to help unbridle healing and growth for all. And I am super excited to start off this conference with our keynote speaker, Mary O'Malley. If you haven't been introduced to the work of Mary O'Malley, your soul is in for quite a treat for this presentation. Mary is an author, a teacher, a counselor whose work awakens others to the joy of being fully alive. Her inspired and transformative approach to being with life, no matter what is happening, offers a way to replace fear, hopelessness, and the struggle with ease, well-being, and joy. We have asked Mary to be the keynote speaker for this conference because her work and approach to healing and personal growth and awakening pair so beautifully with why and how partnering with horses can provide transformational opportunities for ourselves and our clients. Mary's story begins with barely surviving her childhood, and then at 26, she found herself just lost in a labyrinth of self-hatred, confusion, and despair, constantly trying to fix herself so that she would finally feel okay. Then a teacher showed her that fixing was an endless game that would never bring the peace that she had been longing for. Instead, it was being present for herself and for her struggles that is how she would be healed. Over the years, this awakening continued to work in the depths of Mary's being, setting her on a path of changing her whole relationship with the changes in her life and freeing her from the life of struggle and opening her to the joy and the wonder of being fully awake to life. Since then, she's dedicated her life to helping others to heal by seeing the conditioning that they took on that blocks them from life's joys. Through her individual counseling, coaching, she's got online courses, books, classes, retreats, a radio show, blog, and ongoing groups. Mary invites people from all across the world to experience the miracle of awakening. She is committed to helping people heal their inner wars so that they can become part of the healing of our planet. Neil Donald Walsh, author of Conversations with God, says, "I consider Mary O'Malley to be one of the most extraordinary teachers of our time." And Eckhart Tolle, author of The Power of Now, Stillness Speaks, and A New Earth, says Mary's work is a treasure of practical wisdom, profound insights, all pointing to one essential truth: how to awaken into present moment awareness and live in acceptance of what is. He says, "Thank you, Mary, for your contribution to the evolution of human consciousness." Wow, Miss Mary, welcome to the conference.
Oh, so glad to be here. And if we were on video, you would see that my smile is as big as my face. Well, it actually it's as big as the whole universe.
Well, and it matches mine right now because it is truly an honor. When I was putting together my wish list of people to be a part of this conference, you were at the top of it because your work has so profoundly impacted me and also in the work that we do with our clients. It just so beautifully pairs with it. And I was really hoping that you could come and spread and help kind of bring that level of awareness to all the listeners who might not have heard your work, because I think the parallels are so beautiful.
Yeah.
So as the keynote for our conference, we really asked to kind of, if you would be willing to give us kind of that overview of that framework that you really have developed over this lifetime from amazing teachers and from your own self-journey into how we can approach healing and personal growth through awakening versus the illusion of struggle. And I think that that's what the horses really help us do. And so
Absolutely, and help me do, and I think that the best way, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, and an image I've been using lately is just imagine the most beautiful ocean you can imagine that extends forever. This is the ocean of being. This is who we truly are. Floating on that ocean is a small, opaque bubble. And I call it the bubble of struggle. That is where most people live, most all the time. They're caught in their minds. They think their way through life. And we have been trained to fix and understand and get rid of and rise above, and we hire interior designers to design a better bubble of struggle. We're now beginning to realize that the way out of the bubble of struggle is to get to know it. And that's the gift I was given. I knew so much struggle that I almost died of it. But when this teacher came into my life, he taught me how to be curious. In fact, he said, in the seeing is the movement. In other words, you don't need to fix yourself. I mean, I had gone to, hundreds of, it felt like hundreds, psychologists, psychiatrists, hospitals, group therapy, hypnotherapy. And he was the first person that said all that trying to fix yourself just keeps you caught in the world of struggle. Become curious. It is the power of your attention that will heal you. Your ability to be with your fear, not to fix your fear, to be with it. Your ability to be interested in how your mind judges you or judges others. About even eventually coming to the place where you can even be with your despair. So I call that what most of us do to try to heal is management. And I'm not knocking that. I think management is very important. If you're going to a therapist, go to a therapist. If you're taking medications, take medications. But what we're doing is adding engagement. The ability to see and be with what is. And that is, as far as I can see, the doorway out of the bubble of struggle, the opaque bubble that cuts you off from the ocean of being, the ocean of peace and ease that is always with you. So that's why I've written 4 books, and each book has the same message but said in a different way, because we need to hear this. And if your listeners know about Rumi, who is a Persian poet 600 or 700 years ago, but is the most popular poet in the world now, and of all of his poems, it's the guest house that is the most well-known. And that he's talking about engagement. He said, and I won't remember all the words exactly right, this being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. I say every moment a new arrival. A joy, a meanness, a depression. Meet them at the door laughing. For each has been sent as a guide from the beyond to clear you out for some new delight. Now, I usually can't meet my challenges at the door laughing, but I can meet them with curiosity, which is the exact opposite of how we've been taught to use our minds. And the more you learn curiosity, the more your heart begins to open again. And that is where all true healing happens, in your heart that has room for everything. It doesn't fight with anything. It says yes to life. So that's my Reader's Digest synopsis of what I offer to the world.
Well, and I think it is so brilliant. It's so timely right now and needed in the world. And I love that you said it's through that connection point with your heart that you can find that openness and the way to be with life. And I think that's what, when humans have been the source of that pain, sometimes it is the horse who can be that bridge, that sentient being who helps walk with us, that we're willing to accept that connection point into our own heart, because that feels like sometimes our heart is really lost. And like you said, we are stuck in a struggle of a bubble. And I've found that horses can get into that bubble.
Yes, they can. They can. And horses are the heart. I mean, those liquid eyes, the smell, just the smell of it, the rhythm of riding on a horse, and most of us were roughly handled when we were growing up. Most of us didn't have the level of abuse that I did, but we all were roughly handled. And our hearts are, which science has now shown is our main brain. It literally is a brain, and it is our main brain. That our hearts are this beautiful, sensitive system inside of us. And when we were very, very little, they were wide open. We were wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. For most of us, it wasn't safe for our hearts to stay open. And we ran away to our heads that were always trying to figure out how to do life right. Just think of the playground in elementary school, and you'll remember, this always, this unsettledness and this always, am I good enough or right enough? Am I accepted or am I rejected? And the horses are so connected to, the horses that haven't been abused are so connected to that heart energy, and they're safe. So it allows our hearts to begin to open again. And that's what we long for, is to come home to our hearts.
It is what we long for.
Yeah.
And they're the gateway. And so I am asking, if do you have a personal story? I think you said something about when you were 12, maybe a horse.
Yeah. Oh, it just brought tears, Michelle. So I had the kind of childhood that I wouldn't have wished on anybody. And I froze. That's how I had an older sister, and how she survived that insanity was by becoming the accomplished one. And her heart really had to close. And, she graduated summa cum laude from, one of the Ivy League colleges and all that. And how my younger sister survived it was by getting very, very sick. How I survived it was just by freezing. And I can still remember all the torture. We moved to a house where we had to take the bus to school for the first time when I was 10 years old. I used to wake up in the morning with knots in my stomach because we'd have to walk to the bus. And remember, I was frozen. So, there was anywhere from 10 to 15 kids at the bus stop every morning. Nobody would talk to me because I was frozen. Nobody would sit with me on the bus because I was frozen. Nobody sat with me at lunch because I was frozen. And my mother said that she began to realize that I was gone. Well, I was gone a long time before age 10, but that's when she began to realize that there was something very seriously broken inside of me. And so she sent me to a child psychologist, a German child psychiatrist.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. And they had, my mother had started us riding a little bit when I was younger, and they made the decision that I could have a horse. And Miss Cindy came into my life when I was 12 years old, and my throat still swells up. she was an angel. She was this small chestnut mare that barn was probably the first sanctuary I'd ever known. And she was the place where I could cry. I would just get up on her back and lay down on her and just cry and just cry. There was finally a safe place. Somebody heard me, and it was her. And it also gave me something to do, I began showing a little bit and things like that. But due to family circumstances, I had to sell her when I was 16. It was devastating. Oh. And I began I was in a downward spiral, and I kind of evened off just a bit with Miss Cindy in my life. And then I went into a very deep dive and eventually, gained 97 pounds in a year as I was washing it all down with alcohol. And the next year I tried to kill myself 3 times and hated myself because I was even a failure at suicide. But I think that it was like Miss Cindy, it was like I was living in imagine a very, very dark field. And there was a light that went on the other side of the field, and it wasn't enough to bring light to the whole field. And so I'm stumbling my way over to this light, and it was Miss Cindy, and she began to light up that field. And I believe, and I think this is very true, that she was, even when I was trying to kill myself, she was there. I mean, this was how many years later? She was there. There was something about her presence that was there, and thank God I was a failure at suicide. But I just thank her to this day, and I am just so grateful that you're doing this work, because so many of us have been so roughly handled that to open again to human beings is impossible. It's just impossible. And yet it is that connection that we need in order to not only heal, but to thrive. And here are these amazing beings called horses that can offer that to us. So thank you, Miss Cindy.
Yes, thank you, Miss Cindy. And I fully believe with you as well that her signature and her energy is with us even right now as we're talking.
Yeah.
I can definitely feel her. And that, I think it's, from that story, one of the things that really stood out to me is that you were able to move from frozen into a movement. The release that came with her, of her just physically creating that safe place. We know now through the miracles of, HeartMath Institute and everything else that they've been able to measure it, is her biorhythms allow also our bodies, when we're in that deep state of freeze, to start to feel that they can connect, again, that word connection, and pierce that bubble of struggle that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So that you had a felt sense of it somewhere inside of you for when you needed it again. And so as things got worse, that felt sense was still inside of you.
Yeah. And she gave me something, Michelle, that I had forgotten for a very long time. And that was that it was safe to feel. And with her, I could cry. I mean, I can still remember this German child psychiatrist trying to get me to cry. I couldn't cry. I froze with him too. But with her, I could cry. And that was the beginning of the thaw, of who we are. Who we are is free-flowing aliveness. I just invite your listeners to just shake their hands. Just shake, 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 and then stop. and then feel the tingles.
Mm-hmm.
That's energy flowing. And for most of us, it was so unsafe when we were young because we're raised by unconscious giants, and they may have even loved us, but they all wounded us in ways that they didn't even know, what I call the sacred wound that we're all destined to take on. This is not judging our parents. We are all supposed to take on a sacred wound. Well, that tingles that you just experienced in your hand, that literally that was our whole being when we were very little, before we started holding our breath, tightening our body, and running away to thinking about life. In fact, there was a study done once. A teacher once told me about this study. I've never been able to find it, but I'll say it anyway because it rings so true. That they said that all children before they went to preschool were breathing their natural breath, just like dogs, cats, horses, babies breathe. Their whole body is involved with their breath. You can see mainly the trunk, but the whole breath is flowing throughout the whole being. And they say not one of those children, by the time they made it to first grade, was breathing that breath. They had all learned how to hold on. So we all learn how to hold on. And horses are saying, yoo-hoo, hey, and come back, and we can know again. And that's the gift I was given, to have taken on so much heartache to barely survive. And then again to know that joy of relaxing into life. In fact, Pema Chodron, the wonderful Buddhist nun, her definition of enlightenment is relaxing into life. And horses can help immensely. And if you don't have a horse around, a dog or a cat. I have a wonderful cat, sitting on my lap right now. They all are reminding us life is right here, right now, and it's safe to open to it.
And I think that's one of your principles that I love so much, that it's safe to open to what is happening right now, no matter what that is. And that's really what I hold up your book, What's in the Way is the Way, to almost every client who comes through, who that's appropriate for, because your teachings really help say life isn't gumdrops and roses. If we learn some mindfulness skills and we learn how to breathe and we learn this, then all of a sudden magically life turns wonderful.
That's our illusion. Yeah.
That's the illusion.
I want to live in the now. Yes. It's going to be all bliss. Right.
It's all bliss. We're going to co-create this amazing universe, and then you're trying to still fix. It's like it's the interior decorator that you were talking about for that bubble.
Right.
And what I love about your work is it really creates a framework of understanding and kind of like permission almost. For me, it was permission for me to be okay with what was there, and then ask the question, what is in this moment that is maybe creating a frequency or a vibration that I don't want to be in resonance with? What is it? And I think it's what you call the U-turn, like Y-O-U, of looking inward. And so can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that's such a huge gift.
Well, when Eckhart Tolle wrote The Power of Now, and this whole concept had been around for a couple thousand years, but he said it in a way that it kind of got out of the mind, and people began to realize, oh my God, there is a now. I oftentimes invite people to just sit on their porch for a couple of minutes in the morning, and people call this meditation, but that word, I try not to use that word because there's so much have to about meditation. But just to notice the sounds around you. Now, even if you only stay there for 2 minutes, you won't stay with the sounds for 2 minutes. You'll be listening. There's the sound of a bird. There's the sound of a car going by. Oh, my God, I forgot my oil change appointment yesterday. Oh, my God, I can't take my car back there because they won't like me, so on and so forth. Where shall I go? All of a sudden, you're back in your head again.
Mm-hmm.
The key is to not judge that. We've only been trained in thinking about life most of our life, thinking that we are our thoughts. And so the key is to notice there is this living moment. And then there is your story about it. That is just huge, Michelle, to see the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Then, once you begin to get a connection with the moment, then this is when it took off. I mean, my God, I saw an ad a couple of months ago. If you just buy this car, you will live in the now more. I just had to laugh. So then the human ego took it over, just like it took over Jesus' message and Buddha's message, and said, living in the now is unending orgasmic bliss. And I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, oh, Mary, I don't do living in the now very good. So it is, you begin to realize the more you discover how to pay attention. And once you really notice there is this moment and then there's your story about this moment, there begins to become this longing to come home to this moment. And the more you begin to notice that, you notice life opens and closes. It's just like the weather. Yesterday it was sunny. Today it is cloudy. Now I look out the window and there's just a little bit of blue sky in the middle of all the clouds. And 2 days before it was pouring down rain. And 1 month before it was snowing. Life opens and closes. Opens into day, closes into night. Opens into spring, closes into winter. Your breath opens and closes. Your heart valve opens and closes. If it didn't open and close, you wouldn't be alive. And so we begin to move out of this idea, the ego's idea, that living in the now is unending orgasmic bliss, and we begin to realize that showing up for life is showing up for the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. And we have not been trained in that, in how to show up for the difficulties. We oftentimes judge ourselves, or we judge other people. We blame them, for it, or we judge the politics, or whatever. We judge the alignment of the planets. But slowly and surely we begin to realize that one of the greatest gifts we can give to ourselves is to learn how to stay open when we close. And so that's why I wrote the book, The Gift of Our Compulsions, because I was extremely compulsive, and yet one of the greatest teachers I've had in this journey of awakening is this compulsive part of me that used to do drugs, alcohol, and food, and all that, and now and it's been food is my main teacher of compulsion. But to begin to allow, when you are that close, you are tight when you are compulsive, and you are really tight after you've been compulsive. Oh my God, I did it again, and I'll never get through this, and what's wrong with me, and so on and so forth. But to learn how to stay open, to be curious, to explore when the tightening times come. That, as far as I can see, is the way out of the bubble of struggle. It isn't trying to get out of the bubble. It's getting to know how you struggle and the challenges, whether it's health, compulsions, finances, relationships. They will all become your teacher if you discover how to listen.
Yeah. And I love that of like shifting the mindset around seeing it as a struggle, an obstacle, a block, not getting what you want, being unhappy, and changing that to this is a teaching, a learning opportunity for me to see something inside of me that is calling to be to be felt and seen and heard. And through that, that's where that healing just dissolves that bubble. We don't have to do anything to it.
That's right.
It just naturally,
In the seeing is the movement. We're beginning to realize that one of the most powerful things we have, healing tools we have, is our own attention. And then you couple that with the heart, and that is the way out of struggle.
And I think what I have found in the arena with horses, when I take this principle and I ask our clients to practice it when they're in that process of building a relationship with a horse based on trust, respect, and willingness, is that when they view that a connection has been quote-unquote broken, the horse isn't doing what they want, or they've asked the horse to turn left and the horse says no and goes right. That in that moment versus slipping into trying to fix it and correct it, or saying, most of our clients don't go that way. They go into the self like, oh, I'm not good enough. I must not have said this right.
Wrong with me. Right.
Yeah, the horse doesn't like me. And the spiral of that struggle kicks into gear, of being able to take that mindful breath in that moment and say, okay, well, let's look at what does your body feel right now? What does the horse look like? Yeah, and then walk through each one of those with open curiosity versus that judgmental storyteller,
Yeah, and that tightening resistance. Right.
Yeah, and you can see it. They'll get really good. They'll watch the horse freeze, and they can say, and then you say, now look at your shoulder, and they realize that the horse's shoulder and their shoulder look the same. Yeah.
So horses are so sensing, so sensitive. That they pick it up. So we get back to one of the core premises of this work, and it's a statement when you and I were talking before we started the interview, that is really at the heart and soul of this work. Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up, so it can open up, to be freed up, so you can show up for life.
And I'm going to ask you to say that one more time, because I know our listeners, this is visual.
And then I want to explain it a little bit.
Okay.
Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up, so it can open up, to be freed up, so you can show up for life. In other words, life wants us to be awake to life. And yet all of us have taken on contraction that seems to be, I call this the schoolroom. The earth is a schoolroom, and it seems that we have to take on what we're not. And we all have taken on this contraction, and all we've been trained to do is try to fix and change. And, if I just think positively, or if I, try to create my reality, then everything will be okay. But here is this contraction that won't let go until it's met with curiosity and heart. What do I mean by that? So just imagine you're having a bad day, and you go to a friend, and they do with you what you do with you when you're having a bad day. Oh, my God, not again. I'm tired of hearing this. Oh, when are you going to get it together? Oh, my God, you're making a big deal out of nothing. Or they just ignore you, or they just walk out of the room. But just imagine what that would be like if you went to somebody that just listened. That's what horses do. They're just there with you. And you speak for 10, 15 minutes, and all of a sudden you feel better. Nothing has been fixed. They didn't give you any, here's the 3 steps you should do to fix your life. They just listened. And that is what all the contractions that we all took on, that fear, we're so afraid of life, that self-judgment, we're so good at beating up on ourselves, that quiet despair that we all carry, that we're cut off from our alive joy. All of those respond. All of those are like knots that relax and let go when they receive the light of our curiosity and, over time, our heart. So how did I, who started overeating, I'm sure I started overeating before then, but my first real memory is when I was 10 years old of just stuffing handfuls of candy in my mouth. And then eventually fast forward that to years of dieting and fasting and binging, and then gaining 97 pounds in a year when I was 23. How did I come to be somebody that my body has stayed basically the same weight for a number of decades now? I eat what I want because I eat for care. I eat for, I like feeling alive and good, and so that is how I eat. How did I come from that to that? Life is set up to bring up what's been bound up so it can open up, to be freed up, so you can show up for life. Was it scary at the beginning? Yes, because I didn't have the skill set. The man that taught me in the Seeing is the Movement about the light of my own attention didn't teach it with heart. And it wasn't until I met Stephen Levine, who's written many books on death and dying, but it really is about how to be fully alive. He was the man that showed me the pathway back to my heart. And slowly and surely, as my curiosity brought me to the deep grief I carried, the deep fear, the deep self-judgment, the deep anger, as I learned how to, and that's why I've written books, because people need to know this. They need to know this pathway of what I call engagement. Then things calm down. Now, are things calm all the time? No. I'm a human being. And anybody that tells you that they have it all together, run as fast as you can away from that human being. But I keep a very fine European bittersweet chocolate bar in my house at all times. And I do that for a couple of different reasons. Number one, so that my compulsive overeater knows I'm not going to deny it anymore. Mm-hmm. The second is that when I want to enjoy a piece of chocolate, I can enjoy a piece of chocolate. But the third and most important thing is when that chocolate bar is more interesting than just a piece of chocolate, I know there's something that needs me inside. I can't always be there for it at that moment, but I acknowledge, I can see that something's close to the surface. I'll have time later on tonight, and I just breathe and close my eyes, and have pretty well cleared this pathway from the reactive resistant. Oh, screw this! I'm going to eat the whole thing of chocolate, and I don't care. And then afterwards, feeling sick to my stomach, and then the despair comes, and the judgment comes. Oh God, you're just such a failure. You said you would never eat chocolate again, and and all that. That's not what happens anymore. It's all an invitation to recognize that even your compulsions, and what I say is that our core compulsion is to struggle. Mm-hmm. All the other compulsions are an attempt to numb out from that. But all of those, even your compulsion, is not something bad or wrong about you. It is a finely crafted survival system that you have needed. Yeah. And you can turn it into, from an enemy to an ally, from something wrong with you to this exquisite teacher. And I literally would not be who I am today if I hadn't been so compulsive. Because eventually I was able to start listening and knowing that whenever I was compulsive, it wasn't because I was doing something wrong. It was because one of those wounds that I took on, most of our wounds we took on, the core of them before we were 6, one of those wounds was close to the surface. Could I see right away what it was? No. But I could notice I'm holding my breath. I could invite myself, not always in the beginning, to soften my belly and open my breath. But slowly and surely, curiosity kicked in, and I just had this just frisson of joy move up through my body, of just the absolute joy about learning how to be curious about what you are experiencing right now.
Yes. And then breathe into that for a second, because I could feel that on mine, and I was like, "Whew, I feel good." And I think it was that there was a permission for that little child, you know what I mean, that just said, "It's okay to wake up. There is no judgment here," and I think that's the key of, you know, on your website, it's Awakening with Mary O'Malley, and I think that's what you're allowing the body on all of its planes, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, to be able to experience, is coming out of that survival, freeze, flight, whatever, you know, just like each of your sisters took on a different version of how to survive. And then you did. It's your work is through learning yourself. You've crafted it and used it as a teacher, and now you're sharing that with others, which I think is so amazing.
And it's so important, Michelle, to understand we're all wounded. And if you see somebody that is, oh my God, dressed to the nines, makeup perfect, driving the fancy car, don't get caught in the illusion that they have it all together. That's, you know, I've got the chance in the 70s and 80s to see behind the scenes in the private life of a number of spiritual teachers. And I'm here to tell you, we're all nutty as fruitcakes. We've all got wounds, and we are all a work in progress. And we need to hear that, because there's so much shame about not having it all together. But that's the illusion, to have it all together. That is the addiction to perfection. I love to say we are all perfectly imperfect. We are all beautifully flawed. When we hear this, that begins to give us permission to begin to explore, because shame doesn't put a wall between ourselves and our experience.
And you see it.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you're good.
Well, I think it's good right now that we all just notice what we're doing with our breath. There's a good chance that you're holding on to your breath like you usually do. This message that you're hearing is what you have most deeply longed for your whole life, but also were afraid of, because the last time we relaxed and opened to life, we had the living bejesus scared out of us when we were very young. But right now, allow a long, slow out-breath. And then just allow a natural in-breath. So try to breathe deeply. The key to open our breathing is not the in-breath. That's effort. It's the out-breath. And we can even add the great sound of letting go. Ah. And if you're in the public, you can say that quietly inside. long, slow ah. And see if you can soften your belly a bit. No force here. Just an invitation to relax a little bit out of the chronic contraction you've been conditioned into. Ah. Ah. And know that you, like most people, long for what we are sharing here. But also the mind is afraid of. Don't judge that. Don't try to stop the mind being afraid. Ah, of course you're afraid. Ah.
Well, now I'm going to have a hard time doing the rest of the interview because I'm so
I know. and it just, the rest of the time we're together, just, when you can. Because it's so easy to go back into the contraction, which is going back into our thoughts about life. I talk about what's in the way is the way. The storyteller in your mind, my God, it talks all day long. And if you put it on a loudspeaker, everybody would be horrified until they come to realize that, oh my God, everybody else is thinking the same things.
Such a beautiful teaching and experience right there. Just thank you for guiding us through that in that moment.
Just to
and
add
I think
that.
That's the key.
Yeah. Rather than thinking there's anything you have to do with what's being offered here. Maybe add that. Maybe even add like a timer to your phone or something. Or maybe every time you come to the barn and you connect with your horse, maybe you just lay your head against them. Maybe you just, on their neck there, right, where it comes to the withers, and just feel their breath. And then regulate your breath to your horse's breath. And if it's a lot slower than yours, do 2 breaths per breath, or it's a lot faster, do 1 breath for every 2 of their breaths. Mm-hmm. Just a few moments of connecting with your horse's breath before you go and, groom or do a ride or whatever you're going to do. I promise you this will deepen your experience and allow that when the fear-based mind or the trying mind takes over, when you're in the arena, it becomes much easier to notice, oh my God, I'm just tight. Mm-hmm. To stop the horse. And then it becomes easier to establish that connection again between you and the horse, that your tightness disconnects.
Yeah. It truly does work. I can say that because your book, the one that I am most familiar with, What's in the Way is the Way. It has all those wonderful guided meditations, and I got into a real rhythm with it because I was really sick when I was reading it. But I was going through cancer, and so I brought it out into the pasture. Yeah, with my all good now. I brought it out into the pasture with my horses, and I would read one of those and then sit and do, because I didn't have a lot of strength, and so but I could do that meditation, and it was glorious because I would watch my horses shift. They would lay down around me where I was sitting.
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that moment of settling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it allowed me to have a sense of resilience around the places to be able to hold that curiosity versus slipping into the struggle when I went back into what could look very much like the muck of the world, you know. So I think that that's a great, again, like you said, you wrote the books to help teach us the skills.
Right.
And there are so many amazing skills in all 4 of your books.
Yeah. And there's a 10-part series. I mean, we have to start small. You know, at the end of each chapter it's called the remembering section, and it has all these skills in it, and it starts very small. It's just like a child learning how to walk. You know, we live in a kind of mind. If we had the kind of mind we have now, and we were learning how to walk, oh my God, we have never walked, because we would have been judging ourselves. We would have been saying, oh, we're such a failure, and so on and so forth. But a child learns how to walk by taking a step and then falling down, and then taking a couple more steps and falling down. And what our minds say is, well, okay, now you've taken 5 steps, you should be running a marathon. And that's why so many people say to me, you know, I'm just a failure at meditation. All meditation is having your mind, your body, and your heart all here at the same time. And so I don't use the word meditation in this book, but it is an invitation to start with baby steps. And baby steps are, when I wrote The Gift of Our Compulsions, when I self-published it, before the publisher picked it up, I put the story, The Tortoise and the Hare, in there 3 times. I felt it was so important that people get. It's the tortoise that plods along. You know, it is the tortoise that allows one tiny shift in a whole day with a horse. It's the tortoise that gets us there. And so start small. Start tiny. Give yourself the gift of just listening to sounds for 2 minutes every morning, and just notice how busy your mind is without judging it. Oh, busy mind. Oh, my God. Most of the time I think about my life. That's a huge shift of perception. Of course, then the mind will take over. Okay, well, now I'm not going to think so much, and I'm going to sit for 20 minutes twice a day, and so on and so forth. And then we get all glommed up again, and then we come back to, okay, maybe I'll just give myself 2 minutes before I get out of bed in the morning, where I just notice the sensations in my body. We're using our attention to be curious about our immediate experience, whether we're noticing the sensations or noticing the sounds. And slowly and surely you develop that muscle, just like the child develops its leg muscles so it can walk. Slow and steady wins the race.
I love it, and it's, you know, it's really what we work on. And the horses, I call them mindfulness in motion. You know, like they are in the now, and you know, every once in a while you can watch them have a flashback, especially since I work with a lot of rescue horses. But they quickly are working to find balance again, to find center. They don't like to stay in that hyper-arousal state, or all the way down to where I've seen horses dissociate to the point where they'll fall over because they're so out of their body. But they want to so quickly come into the now, and not just the now, they want to be in connection with the world around them. And so
when it's safe. When it's finally safe.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what you offer.
Yeah, and you watch that breath, breath come out of the horse, and they shake it off, just like you had us shake our hands, you know, and then they're like, okay, what's up? And I think that that's the real beauty of bringing in, like you're teaching in your framework, for clients to be able to have the baby steps and not try to supersize this, like I should be able to get there in 2.5 sessions. Actually, let's just work on the sounds right now, and then we can bring in this one. And I think that you mentioned you have your 10-week course. I mean, you could even take that and pair it.
8 week. I have two different 8-week courses, one on the What's in the Way book and one on the Gift of Our Compulsions book, and they can find more on the website. It's really wonderful to gather with other people, although you don't have to be a part of the group part of the courses, but you can just get the recordings of the groups. But it's so amazing to gather with other people that are brailing their way back into life. And I want to come back to something that is very important. So cancer was your teacher.
Was my teacher,
Yeah.
One of them, one of my great teachers.
One of the great teachers. So I want to come back to life is set up to bring up what's been bound up. So it is in the challenges of our lives that oftentimes it kind of cracks the veneer of the bubble of struggle. That being given challenges, the challenges are not here because you have done something wrong, they have done something wrong, or God fell asleep on the job. Whoever polluted the environment caused my cancer, or, oh my God, I caused my cancer because I haven't been thinking right, or so on and so forth. Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up. And so the challenges of our lives are sometimes come bearing the greatest gifts. Now, we don't have to wait till big challenges, but we can begin to use the little challenges like a stubbed toe or menstrual cramps, or a headache, maybe not a migraine because that's like picking up a 100-pound weight, but just use the times when you get tight or you feel your horse is twitching its tail and it feels like it's getting ready to buck. And you just feel yourself tighten, and then you go, oh, that challenge has shown you how you contract.
Yes.
And it is inviting you to relax, to ground and open. So basically the challenges of our lives are for us, and wherever your listeners are, they're right where they need to be, Michelle. Life is a highly intelligent process. For heaven's sakes, it made the DNA molecule out of dust. Wow.
I know.
And really. And it made you out of one cell that was so tiny that it couldn't even be seen with a naked eye, and now it's 70 trillion cells, and they all work together without a thought from you. Okay. This is a highly intelligent process, and you are right where you need to be on your journey home. Everybody is. It's just so much easier when you see it.
And it shifts. Like that's one of the happy side effects of it. Is that shift that happens for if you're in the arena and you're trying to perfect, quote unquote, a skill with a horse or a movement or something like that. It all comes down to that connection and relationship. And if you're not getting the quote-unquote movement that you want, or the client's not reaching the goal that we set up, like ask the horse to join you in the box, you know what I mean, or something like that, and the horse is going everywhere but the box.
Right.
And we'll get to the box and snort and then walk away. It's that perfect opportunity to practice this approach of taking that, and then saying, okay, what is here? Let's take a little bit of an inventory with that curiosity. And laughter always comes. The client kind of rolls his head and goes, I wouldn't want to go in this box either. All my crap's in this box. And then, boom, the horse turns and walks over straight to them and goes into the box.
I know. Oh, they're so magical. They are such good teachers. And we can't always do it. It takes a while to develop this muscle of curiosity, which then allows the armoring of the heart to begin to open. And so you may not be able to do it when you're in the arena, whether you're teaching or whether you're the one that's being taught. but we can do it afterwards. Maybe it's on your drive home, or maybe it's when you're currying the horse in the box stall afterwards, that the more that we can do it, or maybe it's when you go to bed that night. Oh, my God, that was just such a horrible lesson today. Oh, no, wait. Oh, I'm tightening. Oh, okay, life. What were you showing me there? And believe you me, and we haven't, it would be too long to go into living in questions, but if your listeners are interested, email Devra at maryo'malley.com, or you can find her on my website, and she will send you the chapter on living in questions from The Gift of Our Compulsions. It is one of the most powerful tools you can discover in awakening. And here you are in bed, and your mind is going over the lesson and critiquing it, in a very horrible way, and all of a sudden you wake up and you can at least find a breath, but maybe that's all. And then you say, okay, life, what were you showing me here? And you let that question go. And it will live you. It was Gertrude Stein that said the power of questions is not in getting the answers, it's in the questions themselves. So if you're in a situation where, let's say, you've just found out that your mate has committed adultery, and you go to you're so angry, you go to his job and you make a complete fool of yourself, screaming and yelling, and then you get home, and all of a sudden, and then you're, such remorse, and I'm such a stupid person, and so on and so forth, and all of a sudden you realize, contracted. And maybe you find one breath, and then you ask, what are you showing me here, life? Because life is showing you. There's a wonderful quote by Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now, life will give you the exact set of experiences you need in order to become a conscious human being. How do we know they're the right set? Because you're having them. Such a good quote. So ask questions. Ask questions without looking for an answer, and allow life to bring you home.
I love that. I think that's the perfect thing that working with horses lets you do every day, to ask the question. Yeah. And that's the power of going all the way back to, you said, of that connection. What melts that illusion, that bubble of struggle, is that connection to your heart space. Yeah. And that willingness to ask that question connects you to that heart space within. Gets past the storyteller. It's past everything else like that. Doesn't try to fix them, change them, or do anything to them. Just let it be.
And the heart is connected to everything. Absolutely everything. It is wisdom itself. But we have walled ourselves off from our own heart, and now all of your listeners are on the journey back home to their heart, no matter where they are on their journey, because they're hearing this.
They are hearing this. And that's the beauty of you as a keynote for the conference, is really just setting that beautiful intention that we are all on our way back home, back to our hearts. And our heart will lead us exactly where we need to be, because that's where we are.
Including all the chaos on our planet right now. And that's a whole other conversation, but it can be trusted. We don't have to like it, but we can trust it.
It's through that connection and curiosity and awareness that we can open it up to it. Dissolving. Well, listener, it has been wonderful. I just want to quickly let all the listeners know that all your links that you kind of chatted about are below your picture on our webpage. And so you will have the link to MaryO'Malley.com, which has the list of all the amazing services and ways to work with you, which is quite prolific. There's a lot of ways that they can work with you. And then also the other thing I love about your site is that your blog is just it's like this. It's little jewels that you can send out, and you can sign up for that blog too on your website and get these little jewels that just seem to drop in perfectly. At least for me, they do. And the different videos that you have that you share as well on there are just you're so generous with your work and everything that you do.
Well, it look at the gifts I was given. How did I survive? And I think I survived in order to be a midwife for this journey, because I have the right to be a spokesperson because I've known great darkness. And I also know the way through it, and I know it's for us. This is not a Pollyanna kind of idea. This is a living experience.
Yeah. And I think that that's one reason why I resonated with it so much from my own, is because I too have that big trauma history through childhood, and I froze as well. And so working through that, and especially through that healing, that last round of cancer, really was learning how to relax those pieces that I hadn't figured out how to do yet, and not fix them, but just allow them to be.
Right?
Yeah. And I
just
think
like that person that was listening to you, it makes a difference. The power of listening makes a difference. The horse listens. We're learning how to listen to ourselves through the horse. Yeah.
Well, Ms. Mary, is there anything that you would like to add? Is there any closing that you would like to give before we wrap up?
I would like to leave everybody with this image. I love to go sit up on the moon, because when we're caught in our minds, it's a very tight and small place. And so I have gone and sat on the moon for years because it gives me a broader perspective. And I invite people to come sit on the moon with me and look over there. There's our home, this beautiful jewel of a planet. And its creativity is so exquisite. It has created orchids and baby spinner dolphins and aardvarks and giraffes and mountains and cascading waterfalls out of gas and dust. And about 1 million years ago, this new creature came onto the planet, this two-legged creature that had something that never showed up before, and that's the frontal lobe. And we began to think our way through our lives. We began to be cut off from an intimate, alive connection with the earth, which is who we are. And so as you look across at this beautiful blue-green jewel of a planet, see that all over the planet there are people that are birthing, that are dying, that are walking, that are swimming, that are working, that are driving, and most of them have clouds around their head. So they're not connected. And then see, more and more people all over this planet are clearing the clouds of their bubble of struggle. And they are more here, not all the time. We're all works in progress. But they are more here. And the more they are here, they ignite people around them, and they begin to clear the clouds around their head, around their bubble of struggle. And I just invite people to see this as a wave that is passing all across our planet. More and more of us, and even as we are in deep chaos on this planet right now, out of that chaos, more and more people are clearing the clouds and becoming more here for life. And you are a part of that. So thank you. I thank you for all the little microbes in the ground, and for the fish in the sea, and the birds in the air, and the trees all over our planet. I thank you for your willingness to get to know how you struggle, so you can be more here for life and thus become a part of the healing of our planet. Thank you.